Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, The Star-Spangled Man. And, holy fucking shit, this was a really good one. I mean, if this series can continue the quality that the first two have set, we're awesome. And this one, it was another perfectly kind of paced one where we got a lot of character development. We got a good action scene going on, and we got like a lot of deep Cap lore. Like fucking a lot of fucking shit was going on, and it just fucking was firing on all cylinders. And I just did not expect it to go as deep with what was going on, because there was a lot of stuff that like popped. Well, not a lot of stuff, but one thing in particular popped up. Well, no, there's like two things that popped up in particular that I was very surprised about, and can't wait to see how it affects what's going on here and how it's going to be utilized overall within the MCU. So, we start off this episode by getting a look at who the new Captain America is, John Walker. And we see he's kind of more of a toned down one because he's kind of a giant asshole sometimes in the comic books. And in this one, he has more it's really good to kind of like compare him to Cap, where Cap usually had his heart in the right place and would be able to kind of tactically think about certain things and how he said things. This guy, his heart's in the right place, but he doesn't think things as through as most of what's going on, because he understands what it means to put on that uniform and everything. And his partner Lamar, who have the codename Battlestar, as they're like talking in the locker room, and he's of course getting talked to with his girlfriend, fiance, wife. I don't know if it made that clear, but like his significant other, and talking about how they used to come down and she would sneak into and see him in the lockers before games, and this is evidently his old high school. And that he's getting ready for certain things, and his partner's coming, well, this is a big thing, you gotta just make sure that you understand that there's gonna be issues that you're not gonna be able to punch your way out of. Which, incidentally, is a funny enough thing, because most of his problems that he attempts to do stuff with is, like, punching his way out of, not all the time, but, like, dealing with what's going on in an action sequence. But he comes out dressed as Cap, they're playing their own riff of the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan, and we get him talking to Good Morning America. We get more of his kind of background. He evidently has 3 Congressional Medals of Honor, which, that's a fuck ton. But I'm thinking, alright, how many does Cap have to, like, crap out? Because he saved the whole fucking universe, with everybody else involved fighting Thanos. It's like, okay, cool. And we see him training with the shield, and he obviously has been training with it a pretty long time. So, well, not a long time, long enough to be able to kind of fuck around with it pretty well. We see that also in the action sequence that we get to. So they evidently were like, we're going to put this right here. Like, the minute Sam left the premises, some motherfucker went in there and be like, we're going to need this. Come on, train, be trained. I was like, oh, God. It's like, I don't know how long it was before Sam gave them the shield, to him like fucking around with it, to him like being presentable as their PR propaganda Captain America. But you would think you'd need a little bit more time with that, but they're like ramping up like what his stuff is, his service record, and he of course is trying to allay people's fears. He's like, I really respect Steve and everything like that, and I'm like, yeah, and Bucky's looking at this, and his face screams bullshit. Just like everybody else is like, dude, I would only really understand it as if Steve pretty much came up and be like, yeah. And it was like on camera, this dude, shield, we're okay. But see, this is just the propagandized government thing, because, of course, after the 5 years and Cap retiring, they need Captain America. And they just decided to go dum-dum. Like, yeah, and it's not like they could have talked to Steve to try and, like, oh, I don't know, set up kind of some kind of replacement thing and all that. But, again, we get into the whole time shenanigan hoopla shit of like, is he in a parallel universe? What's going on with that? So maybe they couldn't talk to him and everything like that, but you're just like, it just reeks of them just trying to like spin this stuff as they're like interviewing on Good Morning America and seeing kind of what's going on. Well, that then transitioned us into kind of what's going on. Bucky's like, this isn't right, and we need to kind of figure out what's going on with this, and he decides to go and talk to Sam about it. Now Sam's pretty much getting like geared up to like go on her thing, and we get a nice character moment as well, character scene as they're pretty much talking about what's going on. Sam's like, yeah, I was pissed too, but do you think maybe that was the decision I wanted to make to give up that shield? And seeing them talk about it like this, and Bucky's like, this is not what Steve wanted. You see him pretty much doing what Steve was doing after he got the super soldier serum, and he was the only super soldier that they had at that point, so they essentially had him as the dancing, singing dude, and Buck's got a point with that, but Sam's like, listen, we got other bigger things to fry. I gotta go to pretty much Munich, or we trace these guys outside of Munich, and they're like one of the big three, bringing up the whole like androids, aliens, or wizards, and then it's this funny ass discussion of like, there are no wizards. Doctor Strange is a sorcerer. A sorcerer is just a wizard without a hat. It's like, yes, I know about wizards. I've read The Hobbit, and he's like, because Sam brought up Gandalf. He's like, yeah, I know Gandalf. I read The Hobbit in 1937, and it's just when it came, I'm like, just to hear that, I mean, I've seen that clip floating around, but seeing it actually in the episode and it kind of going down, and Sam's just like, huh, okay. And just seeing their dynamic, because Bucky is straight to the point, but he'll throw out some certain things, like in a buddy cop kind of comedy. Sam's kind of the more kind of wildish one, and he'll throw out some weird kind of stuff and everything to just kind of see what sticks with like the whole aliens, androids, and wizards and kind of thing, and it's just kind of great. It's like, all right, Bucky, you read too, The Hobbit, nice. But he's like, all right, we got the group, the Flag Smashers. They're doing some crazy ass shit. We're gonna have to see kind of what they're at. So we traced them to pretty much this building outside of Munich. So I'm gonna go do my thing, and Bucky tags along with him. Just like, what about his therapy appointment and stuff like that? Well, that gets brought up later in this episode. So they're pretty much flying. They're kind of looking at each other. They're kind of stink-eyeing and all that. Bucky tries to get him to tell him what the whole plan is and everything. He's like, just don't worry about it, Buck. He's like, you don't get to call me Buck. Steve knew me longer. It's like, okay. So Sam kind of flies out. And then Buck's, they're at such an altitude that they can't use a parachute. So Bucky just like jumps out. And it's funny because we'd seen like Steve jump out of like a plane in the Winter Soldier, and here Bucky kind of just gets his ass smacked by all of these trees and everything, and is like laying on his back. It's like, shit, Buck, that kind of sucks for you. And then we see Red Wing pop up. He's like, hey, Bucky, I recorded all that. Screw you, man. Pretty much is the general idea. But they get towards the outpost. They're kind of like looking around. Of course, since Bucky is more used to the kind of Winter Soldier kind of style of go in and kind of like fuck shit up kind of thing, he's very direct, tactical kind of thing. Sam's like, let's kind of figure out what's going on and all that, and he kind of goes in, he's using Red Wing, and he's like, hey, hold up there, White Panther. He's like, actually White Wolf. And then like, Sam's like, what? As they're trying to figure out everything's going on, but they start seeing the Flag Smashers, and they have all this stuff of medicine and everything because they're detailing it to like refugee camps and everything like that, and they're trying to figure out what's kind of going on with that, as they're like, a lot of them are super strong, and I'm not just talking on the level of like Cap as like peak human ability, or Bucky, because we see him do like a fucking running speed thing, because during his internment in the first Captain America movie, the first time in the prisoner camp, he was experimented on with their kind of version of the super soldier serum. That's why he was able to kind of survive getting fucked up in a fucking mountain ravine, even though he lost his arm. Most people can't survive just like getting smacked in the bottom of a valley, let alone just be like, yeah, I lost an arm, I'm okay. So these people are like lifting a lot of shit and moving a lot more shit deftly than most people would be able to. So it's like, that's kind of interesting. We'll kind of have to see what's going on there. And he's like, hold up, let's tactically assess. Sam's like, let's tactically assess. Oh, you think there's like 2 or whatnot? There's like 4 or 5. There's quite a few of the Flag Smashers there. So they're pretty much rolling out on their convoy. And the thing is, they think that they see a hostage kind of situation in one of the trucks. Bucky pretty much runs up like a crazed man. Well, not a crazed man, but like super fucking fast. Gets in there. He's like, hey, it's okay. And she like kicks his ass out because she's supered up too. It's like, oh shit. So this is where we start having pretty much our chase with our fight sequence. And this is a good fight sequence because you can tell what's going on and you get character moments in this. What do I mean by this? We see how Bucky and Sam's partnership, because granted they're kind of partnered up right now, but they aren't used to each other's kind of fighting styles, which leads to them kind of fucking up during this fight as well. We also see that, of course, Walker pops up with his partner Battlestar, and that kind of changes around the dynamics, and we see kind of how they fight. And he fights pretty competently with the shield and everything, but we learned that he doesn't have super strength. He's just a regular dude, and that kind of affects how they kind of tactically fight throughout the whole thing, because Bucky pretty much gets his ass not completely and utterly beat. I've seen worse beat downs, and he probably got worse beat downs in movies pretty much by like Stark and Civil War, but he kind of gets his ass handed to him a little bit in here because he wasn't expecting that all of them had super strength. That's what they kind of needed to know. And he kind of gets like mucked around, almost thrown off of the stuff. Sam, of course, makes sure like, you got your ass kicked by a little girl. It's like, whatever. And we see that Walker, of course, is attempting to do his stuff as well. And this is important because usually with Cap, we'd seen him using guns during the World War II portion of his career, and after that, he doesn't really do it. He sticks to hand-to-hand combat and using the shield. Walker here uses his shield, but also uses his gun at one point to shoot one of the Flag Smashers. Now, this is important because it shows that he's willing to use other different kind of armaments, mainly because he doesn't have the super strength. And that's an important kind of factor. But also that the super strength does not relate to super durability because this Flag Smasher got wounded by a bullet. So we also get some kind of more proof of that later in the episode. So they're able to get away. Sam pretty much had to save Bucky from getting like shit smashed, and Walker, of course, had to do the same with his partner, using the shield pretty awesomely to catch him and have him kind of like slide to safety on the road. That was actually a pretty good tactical kind of decision. I don't really like the dude because mainly because of the position he's in, but I could see him becoming a nice ally if this works out in a kind of amicable way. He's not a complete and utter douche, but he does so many he just comes off so douchey. So we see Sam and Bucky pretty much just walking on the road, and then Walker, of course, tries to talk to him. He's like, hey guys, kind of want to ride? And they're like, nah, we got it. And he's like, come on guys, this is an important kind of thing that we got to deal with. It would really help if you guys kind of worked in. And they, of course, then get on the Jeep, and we find out that they pretty much were listening in on their comms to figure out what was going on to come to that place. It's like, okay, so were you sent by the government or not? Because if this is Sam's kind of contract to find out more of those guys, that's kind of like fucking over your contractor and creating a really dangerous kind of like, shit, that's kind of my real world kind of like, that would be kind of messy. Never mind the fact that, of course, Walker probably wants to show himself being Captain America and like helping people, because that would be the best use after that kind of PR campaign that they've got. And the government will probably be like, hey, we kind of got this. If you can get an easy win here, go for it. Granted, we don't get that much in depth into it yet, but that would not be an implausible kind of thing of what's going on here. But Bucky does not like him whatsoever, and I completely understand Bucky's kind of take. And he's like almost openly hostile to the dude off the bat. Sam hides his shit better, even though towards the end Bucky's like, I can't deal with this. He's like, whatever, because he just wants the whole Cap shit, so that way it looks good and everything. Instead of, granted, they want to like take on the Flag Smashers and everything, but there's like issues with that. He's like, I don't care. And of course, Walker then tries to appeal to Sam and he's like, hey, it'd be really good to have Cap's wingman with me. And he's like, it's always the last thing, as he walks off and walks with Bucky as well. Now, Walker's like, kind of like, damn, wish that kind of worked better. We then shift over, we see that the Flag Smashers get to a safe house, and that they are pretty popular with certain people, especially kind of like this underground kind of network. And they're like, all right, cool. We've kind of been made, so we kind of have to work on this. And we learn the lead Flag Smasher's name, Morgenthau. It's like, that's, of course, connected to the person who's originally Flag Smasher in the comic books. So that's a nice kind of callback. We'll have to see how that kind of works out, because that was the rich dude that kind of wanted to go against, like, it was like anti-patriotism kind of stuff. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out here, but evidently somebody's texting her saying, I know what you did and what you stole, and I'm going to come and I'm going to kill you. It's like, what the fuck? And we start figuring out that as they're pretty much trying to take now granted this might happen a little bit later in the episode, but it kind of connects to this. They're pretty much trying to move all this stuff, but the power broker has pretty much zeroed in on them, and that one of their people decides to stay back to kind of let them kind of fly off, and they let them do that as they fly off in their plane. And he goes out to meet them and gets gunned down. His super strength doesn't help him there. That is an important bit, because the Power Broker is an interesting character in the comics, because Power Broker can usually, like, he's usually connected to, like, supervillains, but would also sometimes probably, because of, like, all the different things, is that morally kind of gray area. So usually, like, tech and all that kind of stuff, and it would make sense that with the proliferation of, like, super strengths and super serums and stuff, would have that kind of stuff, and if they stole from that, that's a pretty interesting stuff, and would be like an explosion of different kind of like superpowers and super strengths. Now this is just your basic super kind of strength, what we're looking at the moment, because they're not super durable, because a lot of gun squads came out and they're like, most of them got away, but we took out one of them. So I was really happy and excited to see the whole Power Broker angle explored, and let's like shot down, like plot down here. I'm like, oh, can't wait to see what kind of happens with that, because that could open up like all different kinds of like little underground things. I mean, you could do kind of like a weird kind of story about like low-level superheroes trying to stop a heist, or low-level supervillains trying to do a heist, kind of Oceans kind of shit, and what they had to do and what the Power Broker would get out of that. It's like, there's a lot of potential here, and a lot of potential for that to like interact with what's going on with the story and change it to some really weird and interesting directions, to have other kind of superpowers, other kind of gadgets brought into what's going on. Excuse me. Well, that's kind of where Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers kind of end up. We then see that Bucky's trying to figure out more kind of leads of what's going on with these super strong people. He's like, I kind of got a lead that's going to go to check it out. So they go from Germany and they go to Baltimore, Maryland. And Sam's like, what are we doing here? We get a nice kind of little scene as Sam's kind of walking down, and a kid's like, hey, aren't you the Black Falcon? He's like, no, I'm just a Falcon. What? Call you Black Kid and everything like that? It was really kind of a funny interaction where it's just like, he just has that kind of ease kind of talking to people. Yeah, he gets into some weird-ass situations. He's fought aliens and gods and shit. And it's just like, yeah, he's just Falcon. So we see that Bucky and him then walk up to this house, and of course there's the kid at the front door is like, no, we ain't talking. And he tells the kid to tell Isaiah that somebody that he had interacted with in Korea wants to talk with him. And we then go in, and this is the other kind of big important bit of Cap lore kind of shit that gets dropped here, because we are introduced to Isaiah Bradley, and the kid, of course, was probably Eli. That sets up stuff for the Young Avengers, because Eli is Patriot, the young Cap analog. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of pops up with that, because he in the comics takes like mutant growth hormone to kind of do his superpowers, which could of course be brought into like weird kind of shit from the power broker if done correctly. So you could see a lot of stuff going on. But Isaiah is a black super soldier, because we learned throughout all this that during the Korean War they encountered each other, and evidently Isaiah whooped his ass and like ripped off his arm, and he only let him in because he was wondering if the like metal arm would grow back. Which, by the way, being as old as he is, and with all the shit that he's probably dealt with and seen gone on in the universe so far, that does not sound like crazy old man territory. It'd probably be like, yeah, whatever. But he is here to pretty much ask him if he knows anything else of any other places with super soldier serum, because they need more leads with what's going on with the Flag Smashers. He, of course, brings up that he doesn't give a shit, and that he has dealt with a lot of shit, that he worked, that since the super soldier serum worked, he was like court-martialed, imprisoned, and experimented on, and he doesn't really give a shit, and like threw something into a wall with super strength, and he's like, I don't care, and talked about like you people to Bucky, but he was more referencing Hydra, as Hydra was involved with detailing like experimentation, because he's another person that has survived the super soldier serum program. And this is important because it kind of shows that like Cap's distrust of the government as his story went on was valid, because look at what they did to Isaiah. They court-martialed him and imprisoned him for like 30 years and experimented on him to still kind of like go on with what's trying to figure out what's going on with the super soldier serum and try to make more of it. And this becomes important then, because that means that the government has either knowledge somewhere acquired from like Hydra taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. or other kind of avenues of a super soldier serum. Why would they not give that to Walker? Now, granted, they could be essentially testing Walker at the moment to see if his PR ability works, if people latch on to him enough as a replacement Captain America before they do that. But that is like, oh shit. So they're pretty much leaving, and Sam is just fucking rocked by this bombshell that there's another super soldier, and it's a black super soldier, and it's been hidden for all these years, for all the, like, he was active during the Korean War and shit. And he, of course, is understandably pissed. I'm like, yeah, now granted, he's not, like, fucking going off like a motherfucker or anything, but he's just, like, talking with Bucky about it, and, of course, police come in and are asking if everything's okay, and they're like, yeah, we're alright. Bucky and him are just like, we're just talking here. It's not no big thing. They weren't, like, going at each other or anything, and they didn't recognize him as Falcon, because the officer goes, I didn't recognize you because of the goggles. I'm just like, really? If I was like, no, granted, I'm a Cat fan, and I would be a Cat fan in the MCU universe. Now, granted, if I saw Sam, I'd double take, because I'm like, is that actually him? You know what I mean? I'm like, is that Falcon? I'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm just like, sweet Jesus. Fuck. And I'm like, that, no. And they're trying to, like, calm everything down, but evidently there is a warrant out for Bucky because he missed his court-mandated therapy session. So they pretty much take him in. Sam, of course, goes down to the station to figure out what's going on. Bucky's therapist, Raynor, comes in, and she says, you know what? We're both doing this, and goes in. And we get the joint session where I liked this therapy session better because it didn't get into close-ups of the faces. I just thought it kind of got a little bit too close in the first episode, and it was kind of more distracting than what was going on. Here, it was kind of a little bit better. And it's funny because the therapist is trying to get Sam in, and it's like, why am I even fucking here? And it's like, you were working together doing shit, so let's kind of fucking deal with this shit. And Bucky, of course, really doesn't want to get too much into it, but she's like, fine, let's do this. I want you to look into each other's eyes. And then they start doing it into a staring contest, like, oh, Jesus Christ, kids, no. And they wanted to talk to each other. And Bucky brings up that him giving the shield away is an important bit to him because Steve trusted you with that shield. And if Steve wasn't right in trusting you with that shield, is Steve wrong about me? And that was a big kind of thing. And Sam brings up the counterpart that, like, maybe you and Steve need to realize that maybe I made the right choice. And both of them have valid things that they have to talk about, but it's like, that Bucky thing is an important kind of thing. He is trying to get over what happened to him as the Winter Soldier. And one of the bedrock things that he has is Steve's trust in him. And if something shakes his trust and Steve's trust of that he can do this, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. And for Bucky to admit it like that, I was shit, man. I was like, God damn, Bucky. Now, Sam, I can understand, like, the mantle of Captain America and what it means, and to carry that legacy, to honor Steve and honor everything that kind of came before. That is an important thing, and Sam does have that choice. And if he believes he made the right choice in giving up that shield, it should be respected. But the thing is, does the other information that he learns of, like, what was going on with Isaiah and what's going on with, like, John Walker as Captain America, would that change his mind in what he's deemed as the right choice or not? We'll kind of have to see about that. But Sam says that and leaves, and then we see that, like, Rainer's like, Bucky, you okay? You look really kind of shaken up. He's like, what was rule number 2? Don't hurt anybody. And we'll kind of have to see how that kind of works out, because they're kind of hurting each other right now with what's going on, because Bucky was getting personal. Well, not deeply personal. He didn't say, Sam, you ugly motherfucker, go suck a cock. You know what I mean? But even then, that's not sometimes personal. Sometimes that's just trash talk between friends. Again, context matters. Context matters in that kind of situation. But they're both trying to get out. But the thing is, they're both having important kind of issues with what's going on with everything around Cap and dealing with that legacy. And that's cool to see worked out here. So they get out, and we see that Bucky has been let out and everything because Walker did it, because he's trying to do another olive branch. He needs help. He needs Bucky and Sam to help him out. And they go out and they kind of discuss it in the parking lot of the police station. Bucky, of course, is like, fuck it, we're going to do it on our own. Sam, of course, brings up the whole thing of, like, you got to deal with a lot of bureaucracy and tape and everything. We're kind of more free agents. We'll kind of learn a little bit more stuff on our own, which Walker seemed amicable to when Sam was kind of saying it, when Bucky's like, I don't want to know shit about you. We start seeing the anger, and Walker's like, fine, fuck you, man. I've been nothing but nice. I even got you out of this whole shit with getting in problems with the government and the whole therapy shit. Fuck you shit. And kind of walks off. And then Sam and Bucky are like, alright, we don't have any leads. Where do you think we can go to now? Pretty much they think they're Hydra source, and that would be Zemo. So we're kind of pretty much have like a Hannibal Lecter kind of style thing, in my opinion, about what's going to be going on. As we then shift over, we see that Zemo is still incarcerated somewhere. So during the 5 years, he's either stayed in there because, I'm sorry, if he got fucking snapped out, I don't think he would willingly put him. He'd be free in the wind doing some other kind of weird shit. So that either leads me to believe that he stayed in there, or he got snapped. It'd just be really fucking weird if Zemo actually fucking got snapped back out of existence, came back in someplace, and then would turn himself back in. I would think that his hatred of superheroes would have demanded that he finish his mission and shit. But it will be interesting to see how they kind of like talk with him and try and figure out what kind of information they're able to glean from him for other Hydra kind of super soldier kind of things as well. And if they kind of like hit him on the thing of like, dude, since you pretty much created a schism in the Avengers, it led to a lot of bad shit going on. So you kind of are part of this too, my friend. So I'm really intrigued to see all these things going forward. I loved the action and the character development that we got on here, and I all the deep kind of lore and connections that we get and all the seeds, and I can't wait to see what sprouts from them. This is like, granted, I understand that there's 2 episodes so far, but this has been like my favorite because of how kind of like deep it kind of went, and it almost went at too fast of a pace to a degree. It really did it, but like there's like a lot of stuff like, Jesus, you almost can miss some stuff with just like blinking and everything. It just, they did it so well, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I can't wait to see where this goes and what the kind of end point is going to be at the end of this series, and where our characters are going to be in the MCU, and what that's going to like affect and change with things. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.